Now, let us discuss how Iran established deterrence. First, in the area of desalination plants. What are desalination plants? You see, in countries like Nigeria, in most countries of Africa, when we need water, what do we essentially do? For individuals, they dig wells, wells that they can draw water from with containers by hand. Mm? Or they dig deeper boreholes, you know. However, in the Middle East, in the axis where war is currently happening in the Middle East, shallow wells and boreholes are essentially ineffective. They can't work. Why? It is either you are dealing with rock, a lot of rock in countries like Iran, or you are dealing with very arid and dry soil where the water table is extremely low, by far below what deep wells or boreholes can reach. So what do they depend on to source their water? They depend on what is called desalination plants. How do desalination plants work? Now, don't forget that the vast majority of those Gulf countries, countries along the Persian Gulf, actually have coastal access. All of them have access to the sea. All of them have access to the waters of the oceans and the seas around that area. That is the source of water they depend on to drink, to function, to wash, and to take care of everything they need water for. However, there is a problem with seawater. Seawater is extremely salty and it is dangerous and even toxic for human consumption when you take it raw. So how do they solve their problem? The way they solve it is to bring in desalination plants. So what desalination plants do is essentially that they extract the water, they suck the water from the seas, they extract the salt and other impurities from the seawater, and then pump the desalinated water back into the country that needs it. And essentially, that is clean, usable, drinkable, and potable water. Because of that, I'm sure you now know that desalination plants are extremely critical infrastructure, you know, in the countries of the Gulf and a lot of countries in the Middle East generally. They are extremely important to Israel. They are extremely important to Iran, and they are extremely important to the Gulf countries that are currently at war. Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Bahrain, Kuwait, the United Arab Emirates, and all. So, which means that if you want to cause civil strife in any country in the Middle East or its environment, one of the critical infrastructure you can go after are the desalination plants. However, there is a nuance to the concept of desalination plants in the Middle East. The relative dependence of each country, that is fielding in this war on desalination plants for the water stock is different. For example, Iran is only 30% dependent on desalination plants, while a country like Saudi Arabia is as much as 90% dependent on the desalination plants. In fact, the UAE is about 70% dependent on the desalination plants, while Israel is about 50-60% dependent on desalination plants for their water source. In short, of all the countries that are currently involved, in war along the Persian Gulf and in Israel, Iran is the least dependent on desalination plants, only 30%. While the other countries that are actually fighting Iran, are by far more dependent on desalination plants. Now, how did the deterrence equation come in? Sometime last week, before Salah, hmm, America and Israel, because whatever America does in this war, Israel is automatically guilty of it because they came together to fight Iran. America attacked Iran's desalination plant somewhere in the place called the Qeshm Islands. Qeshm, Qeshm Islands. Do you know what Iran did in return? Iran started attacking the desalination plants of all the other Gulf countries in that environment, including that of Israel. That was the last time America attacked any of Iran's desalination plants or water infrastructure. That is deterrence. If you do me, I will do you. Now, I am even less dependent on this critical infrastructure that you attacked. You are by far more dependent on it. So if you are ready to lose all of your desalination plants, that provide between 50 to 60, 70, 80, 90% of your water, and risk social upheaval, and risk civil strife, and risk massive protests of your people against you, then you can as well continue to attack my desalination plants. But if you cannot risk it, if you cannot take the risk of massive popular revolts against your government by your people, then learn to stay away from my desalination plants. That was the deterrence equation Iran set for America and Israel with respect to desalination plants, and message gotten, obeyed, and that was the last time we had that America and Israel went after Iranian desalination plants. So that is the desalination equation with respect to, as in that is the deterrence equation, I'm sorry, with respect to desalination plants. Thank you for joining me on this video. Again, don't forget to like, to follow, to share, to comment, and broadcast. And please ask your questions, and I'll gladly answer them. See you in the next video.